It's May 24, Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. My name is Vasyl Samokhvalov, and joining us online is Ivan Fedorov, the mayor of Melitopol. Good afternoon, Mr. Ivan. Good afternoon, Mr. Ivan. The first question is like this. Within the last couple of days, Russia is under stress due to the events in Kursk and Belgorod regions, and Russians are said to remove some troops to reinforce the border in those areas. Do you see any changes in the district of Melitopol, any unstandard moves by the Russians? Well, we don't observe such tendencies in Zaporizhia part of the front line. We see that number of Russians increase in Zaporizhia, Volochansk and Tokmak. The number definitely increases, but not decreases in some villages from where the enemy evacuated our people in the forced manner. The Russian military, they dwell in the abandoned houses, abandoned homes. So if we see any tendency to move in the enemy troops, so it's increasing rather than decreasing. So we cannot say that in Zaporizhia direction the amount of troops of the enemy is decreasing. So another question, then Ukrainians started targeting barracks and the headquarters of the Russians along the front line, and even in the depth, in the rear. We understand that Melitopol is one of such points where the Russians bring their wounded ones, their injured ones. So what is the load on the hospitals and the morgues of Melitopol? Well, I can confirm that information. Within the last couple of days, near the village of Belozerka, right near Melitopol, there was a destruction of the enemy troop, and at least dozens of dead and injured were delivered to the municipal hospital, which provides medical services to the civilians, as well as to the captured military sanatorium, where the enemy re-outfitted as their hospital. Also near Tokmak there were similar events, and what's interesting, the corpses were brought by Russians to the brother sepulcher, and they were burying them en masse right there in Chapaevka. Let's listen to the questions from the floor. Olga Panasenko, Ukrinform. Today it was reported by the Russian mass media that in the National Reserve of Khersonesto-Vrisky there are exhibits demonstrated which were stolen from Zaporizhia. So what do you know about that? What are those exhibits? Thank you. What's going on with them? Well, it's today's trend. The trend is like this. From Melitopol Kam'yana Mohyla, and from Melitopol Regional Museum, and from Berdiansk Museum, where there were the original pictures by Aivazovsky, all those exhibits were mostly stolen and brought at least to the territory of temporarily occupied Crimea. From Kam'yana Mohyla, those are the artifacts which were in that museum. From Melitopol Museum, what was stolen is the scythe gold, and from Berdiansk Museum it was the originals of Aivazovsky pictures. And the fact that they are currently exhibited in the temporarily occupied Crimea does not evidence that they will stay there for long. I'm sure that the enemy will continue pillaging everything from our temporarily occupied territories, including museum exhibits. Ms. Olka, do you have any more questions? Well, today in the temporarily occupied territory of Zaporizhia region there was a last rain in the school, so can we assume that Russians currently have not deported as much children as they would like to create this propaganda picture of a big feast. Do you have any details about the number of children who were deported under the premises of recreation from Zaporizhia region? Thank you for this question. Well, first of all, the last raid happened yesterday. It took place in a quite a non-standard manner. If we check last year tendency, when enemy wanted to make it with a lot of pathos, and the proxy governor was traveling around the schools to greet our children. So this year, none of the proxy governors visited the schools. The schools were guarded by enemy troops, but no children came there. They were totally encircled by enemy troops. As to the number of children who were forcibly deported, we understand that children are being deported from those territories where the enemy announced the forced evacuation is 30 kilometers in the depth from the forward edge of the battle area into Zaporizhia region, and from other villages there is no mass deportation of children going on. So I will proceed to my last question about the humanitarian and social situation. So how are things with the jobs in Melitopol? What's your evaluation of unemployment level? And how do you evaluate the level of life? So I checked the Melitopol sites that all the food products are being brought from long distance, and a lot of products are falsified. And people complain that they cannot buy the basic necessity products for them. Well, 80% of the population is unemployed because none of the businesses work. The enemy pays no social payments to the population, and we understand that those who don't have Russian passports, who still resist, who don't want to accept Russian citizenship, they are not even eligible for such social support, and the prices are like 3 or 4 times higher than in any city of our country. So the enemy tries to fulfill their basic task to turn our citizens into intimidated beggars. So this is why the prices grow, and they don't give our citizens enough money, so they feel certain insufficiency in terms of food products supply and other basic services supply. Thank you very much for this information. Joining us was Ivan Fedorov, the mayor of Melitopol, who told us about the situation in the city and the region. Thank you. See you shortly.